I didn't know that I could just be like, no, like I'm not doing Pitocin. I would walk, boom, gush, walk, boom, gush, like sit down, gush, lay down, gush. Like I was just like, I was going everywhere. I am not one of those moms that is like, pregnancy is beautiful. You never complain about pregnancy. I'm one of those people that is like, pregnancy is hard. I just want to like encourage you guys to advocate for yourselves. If you are pregnant or if you already had a baby and you had bad experiences, like you get to pick your nurse. If you don't like your nurse, you can switch out nurses. What is going on? Welcome back to our podcast. We have changed our name and you might have noticed. So we just wanted to start off real quick with a quick summary of what the podcast is now going to be about. We decided to make it a more specific audience with more specific topics, and we chose parenting. So we're super pumped about it. So this is for anyone that is on level 1 of parenting, if you want to call it that. So we consider level 1 to be like baby and toddler. So we are definitely level 1 with a 19-month-old or year and a half, however you want to say it. So we just invite you to come in and just listen with us, relate with us, cry with us, laugh with us, and just come alongside us as we pursue the wisdom that God invites each of us to partake in. So we are super excited about this. This is not a we know everything type of podcast. This is a come relate with us podcast. Let's talk about what happened last week sort of podcast. So we hope that you enjoy. And today is going to be episode 6, and I'm actually going to be sharing my birth story. Unfortunately, Christopher is unable to join today, but it's a perfect week for him to be able to even miss because, well, I'm the one that gave birth. So I thought I'd just kind of kick it off. I just want to run through when I went into labor, what my labor was like, and if we have time, I'd love to just talk about some of the things that I wish I could have changed about my labor experience. So my due date was actually April 9th, which is my own birthday. What are the chances of that? Very slim, I think. So on April 6th, I ended up having to go to the OB/ECC because a few days prior, I had actually had my membrane swept at my 39-week appointment. And the doctor had told me that bleeding is normal, but if you have bleeding for more than 1 or 2 days, you should go to the emergency room just to check it out and see what's going on. So we ended up going and we were there for many, many hours late at night. And they ended up concluding that it was nothing serious. And the doctor actually said that he honestly didn't know when I was going into labor and it could be a while still. So we left like super discouraged and bummed because you know, when you are in that last month of pregnancy, the thing you want most in life is to just hold your baby and snuggle your baby. And at that point, you're just like tired and your body aches and you're always hungry and your baby's kicking you in the ribs. At least that's what my experience was. Side note, I am not one of those moms that is like, pregnancy is beautiful. You never complain about pregnancy. I'm one of those people that is like, pregnancy is hard. Pregnancy is hard on your body. Yes, your child is a gift, but there's no need to act like you are Superwoman because you're still just a human, okay? Like, it's okay to say that like you're in pain and that you're tired and that you wish that you weren't pregnant anymore, okay? So I'm just putting that out there. But anyways, so that was April 6th. And then I wake up April 7th and I'm leaking something. And I never peed my pants when I was pregnant. Blessed. And I was like, oh, what? I don't know what this is. Like, maybe my water's leaking. I don't know. And I concluded that I was out of my mind because we had been at the emergency room the day before. And the doctor had told me, like, I don't think you're going into labor anytime soon. It could be a little while still. And it wasn't even my due date yet. So this is happening on the 7th, like that my water I thought was leaking. That's the 7th. And my due date wasn't even for 2 more days. And mind you, this is my first baby. So first babies normally go late. At least that's what I always hear and what I've experienced with my friends around me. So I was like, I think that this is just in my head. It's probably just like random discharge. I'm pregnant. You never know what's going on down there. So I just kind of disregarded it for the day. And I was still working full time. I decided to work full time until I literally went into labor. So that kind of helped me a little bit, but I had these symptoms like I had the flu. And honestly, I'd felt that ever since I got my membrane swept. So I just felt like I was going to go into labor because I felt so gross after doing the membrane sweep. And I just was not feeling very good. And I decided that I was going to do these stretches in the afternoon. I had seen them on YouTube. It's an hour and a half and it's a set of it's three different stretches and you do each one for 30 minutes. And it is kind of painful when you're so pregnant. Literally any position is painful when you're pregnant. So I wasn't completely for it. I had done it once or twice when I was like 38 weeks, but I hadn't done the full routine because it's just so uncomfortable. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it because if this is my water leaking, maybe it'll help it break. So I went ahead and I did the stretches. And then after I did the stretches, I immediately went and laid down and I called Christopher and I was like, listen, I think that maybe my water is leaking, but I really don't want to go back to the emergency room. So I just like, what do you think I should do? And he was like, I think we should go back just to be safe. And so I was like arguing with him. I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to waste the time and the money if it's not. And we just went yesterday and the doctor said like, I probably wasn't ready to give birth. And he was like, I don't know. So after that, I hung up and I called the doctor and I had the same conversation with the doctor. And she's like, listen, I think you need to go to the ECC. I think you need to check to see if it was your water. I can't guarantee it, but we might as well check. And I was like begging her. I was like, please don't make me go. Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to sit there for hours. I don't want to spend the money. Like, just tell me I can stay home. And if my water fully breaks, then I'll go. And she's like, no, you got to go. So this is April 7th. It's around probably 4:45, 5 p.m. now. And I called Christopher back. And I'm supposed to be going to a birthday party. And he's just getting off of work now. And he's heading to night school. So I was like, listen, the doctor said I should go in. But how about this? I'll make a deal. You go to school, I'll go to the birthday party, and then we'll come home late at night, we'll regroup, and we'll go to the emergency room. And he was down for it. But while I was talking, I stood up and my water just like broke all over the place, all over me, on the floor, and I could not believe it. And it's crazy because the percentage of women whose water breaks before they even start contractions is like, I think it's 10%, like 8 to 10%. Which is so slim, right? And so the fact that that was me, I was like, what's going on? And the funny thing is, I had always wanted it to be that way. I wanted my water to break, so I knew like this is the moment. These aren't like false contractions or false labor or anything. This is my moment to give birth. And so I was like super excited, super shocked. I was like, all right, never mind. I am not going to the party. You should not go to school. Let's go to the hospital. So he came home. We just kind of took our time. Like he took a shower. I packed a bag. We went to Chick-fil-A and then we got to the hospital around, I think it was about 7 p.m. And we had to get admitted to the OB-ECC first. And so they did one of those, they like test what's leaking out of you to make sure it's actually amniotic fluid and that your water broke. And so they did that test on me. And it came back that my water did in fact break. And I was like, listen, if this wasn't my water, I don't know what is coming out of me because I can't stress it. Like I would walk, boom, gush, walk, boom, gush, like sit down, gush, lay down, gush. Like I was just like, I was going everywhere. It felt like I was peeing my pants constantly. So I was very relieved when they were like, yes, it was your water broke. So it took a while to get into a room. I think like an hour and a half. So it's probably about 8:30. And let me tell you about the woman that stabbed my hand. So she's like, all right, I have to put an IV in. I was like, sure. She's like, let me put it in your hand because then it's not in the way as much as it would be on your arm. I was like, whatever. I don't think I've ever had an IV in my hand. So she tried to do it and it didn't work. And so she pulled it out and she's like, I'm so sorry, but it didn't work. All of a sudden my hand like swelled up and it became all bruised. And I kid you not, it was the most painful thing except for my contractions when they were like 10 out of 10. It was insane. Like it hurt so bad. And it was just frustrating. I'm probably exaggerating, but it was just frustrating because it's like my mind is already going a million different directions and I'm thinking about birthing a baby in the next few hours. And now I'm thinking about my hand that is like in excruciating pain and I can't like move it very much. It's just a huge bummer. So next time I give birth, I'm going to just tell them, go straight in the arm. I don't want it in my hand. So they did that and they asked me a million questions. And while they're doing all of that, I'm slowly starting to get contractions, but they were pretty slow, not strong. The pain was minimal. It was like light period cramps. So around 11, they were like, listen, your contractions are not close enough together. And so we want to put you on Pitocin. So I was like, all right, I'm here for it. Whatever you guys want to do, like whatever you think is best. So they put me on Pitocin and I kid you not, like the lady, she had to give me, I think it's like a whole bag of liquids first to make sure I'm hydrated. And then she put up the bag of Pitocin and she hooked it to my IV and she laid me down on my side and she put blankets and like, I'm getting all comfy, right? She turns off the lights. She's walking out the door and the first contraction hit me. And I like jumped up, like I like pulled myself out of bed. I was like, get me out of this bed. Like, I cannot do this. I was in so much pain. I cannot stress it. I did not realize that Pitocin did such a number on you. And I also wasn't connecting the dots because I had just been on the Pitocin, like it just happened, right? So I thought for sure it would take a few minutes or at least like an hour even for the Pitocin to really kick in. But I think that she put me on a pretty high dose to start with, which was not cool at all. So she got me out of bed and I was on the ball and I was standing, I was in the restroom, like everything I could, but I threw up. I was in so much pain. I could barely breathe. To explain it, it was like, thankfully you have breaks, right? Like between contractions, but once the contraction hit, it was like the worst period cramps you can imagine times 10. And then the pain, I don't know, like women, when you have a period, like if I have a really bad period, I have pain that shoots down my legs. It's like from my uterus down to my legs. I had that, but like on a whole nother level. Like my legs were just on fire and aching along with my uterus and everything down there getting really tight. So unfortunately, I couldn't handle it. So I ended up asking for an epidural within an hour. So when they did the epidural, I have to say, I always hear stories and people are like, at least on YouTube, people are like, oh my gosh, like I hate the epidural. Like it's so scary. Like it hurts so bad. So I'm like over here sweating it. I'm like, I am going to be in so much pain from this needle. And okay, to be honest though, it does look terrifying. It is terrifying. And they were like, you cannot hold Christopher's hand. He has to go across the room for sterile reasons. And I was like, this is crazy. So, and I think they did it during a contraction because you're like contracting, right? And you're trying to sit on a bed and you're trying to like be normal while you're getting a massive needle up your back. So I honestly barely felt it though. And it was really easy. And I was so relieved. So I know that everybody's experience is probably different, but coming from me, the epidural was extremely easy and painless because you're already focusing on the fact that you are in labor and that you're contracting and you just want those contractions to, like the pain of the contractions to not be there anymore. So you're willing to just deal with the needle. That's my thought process on it. So they ended up giving me an epidural and they laid me down. And by now it's about midnight, I believe. So at 1:30-ish, they came in and checked me and I was only 3 centimeters, which was a bummer. But I also understood because it's my first baby and you always hear that first babies always take longer. Like labor can take a really long time. So I was fine with it. And she was like, listen, just lay on your side, get some rest, and I'll come back and check on you later. And I believe at that time she put one of the peanut balls in between my legs. It is supposed to like open you up so open up your pelvis, right? So the baby can come through the canal, I think. So she went ahead and did that. And Christopher and I got to rest, which was really nice. Like the lights were off, it was nighttime, and I wasn't feeling a lot. So I was very, very thankful. But at like 3 a.m., I started feeling a lot of pain just on my right side. And I didn't really know why. And I was wondering if it was just like not a big deal. But within like 20, 30 minutes, I could not handle the pain anymore. I was in tears. I was calling for the nurse, and I was like squirming in bed because you have to remember, like, my left side is still numb. It's not like I can get up and walk around now. Like, I have to stay in bed, but I'm in so much pain, and I'm literally contracting and feeling it all on my right side. So while just laying there helpless. So she came in and she was like, oh, like I should have rolled you to your other side by now. The epidural has shifted just to your left side of your body. And I was mad. I didn't tell her that, but I was pretty bummed. I was like, you couldn't have set a timer or something, but she didn't, and that's okay. It's over with now. So she went ahead and she put an extra dose of the epidural in me because I was still even feeling pain on my left side a little bit. So they did an extra dose of the epidural and they put me on my right side, and then I was able to relax a little bit. So fast forward to like 4:30 a.m., she came in and checked me, and I was like, I will just be thankful if I'm a 5 or a 6. Like, I just want to be a 5 or a 6. And she checked me and was like, you're like an 8 or a 9. And I was freaking out. I was so excited. I was like, Christopher, because he was sleeping. I was like, Christopher, like, wake up. Like, I'm an 8 or a 9. Like, we're going to do this thing. And the nurse was like, you progressed really fast. So I was here for it. I was super here for it. So she's like, let me just like prep everything and get the nurses and tell the doctor, but we're going to just take our time. And I was like, take our time. I was like, well, here's the thing. I'm feeling something down there. She was like, what do you mean? And I was like, pressure, a lot of pressure. What does that mean? She's like, that's probably the baby's head. Let me check. So this is within like 30 minutes of her checking the last time. I was at a 10 and Halston's head was there ready to go. So we rushed and I started pushing pretty quickly after that. And so I did, I think it was 10 separate contractions of pushing. So it was a lot of pushing. It was really wearing me out. And you have to note that the epidural machine turned off while I was pushing and no one was noticing it. And then I finally figured it out because it like beeps when it's going to release extra epidural for you every time. And it wasn't beeping. So I was like, oh, you guys, I think something's wrong with the machine. And they were like, oh, shoot, it turned off. Like, do you want us to turn it back on? Like, we can get it back on and get you more epidural. And I was like, no, I think I kind of want to feel it because I've always heard that the downside of an epidural is that you can't feel when you're pushing, you can't feel a baby coming out. And that's something that a lot of women want to feel. And so I was like, you know what? Let's not turn it back on and let's let it wear off so I can like feel myself pushing. I can feel my legs. I can feel her head and her body coming out. And I'm so thankful that I did actually. So I definitely got to feel her, not to the full extent for sure, because I know the epidural takes time to wear off and I was not down to feel it all the way, but I did feel it for sure. So it was nice. And after those 10 pushes, I remember they were like, her head is out. Like, all right, this is it, Bethany. And I was like, her head is out. Like, what do I do now? Like, I started to panic because I'm like having this mental picture of her head's out, but her body's in me. So what do? Do I just let her sit there and wait for the next contraction to push her? Or do I just start pushing? So my instinct was to start just pushing. So I pushed out pretty quick and I was just so relieved. Like, it was the coolest thing ever. Like, I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to give birth again. She was the cleanest baby I have ever seen, like spotless. And she was not purple. It was like she had just been hanging out, having a play date in my womb and, well, just hanging out in my womb. She wasn't having a play date with anyone because it wasn't twins. Anyways, just was like, oh yeah, mom, I'll come out. Like, let's hang out. I'm ready to go. Where do you want to go? So it was so cute and so nice. It was just fun to like see how clean she was. I was here for it. So, because I just don't do very well with blood or anything of the sorts. Like when they took my placenta out, I could not watch. I was like, no way. I'm just looking at Halston on my chest and just enjoying this moment with her. Same thing for the stitches, because I did tear. I think I had a first-degree tear, but it was internal and external, unfortunately. And that was a pain in both the way of it felt like a pain and it just was a pain because it was a pain to heal. And I overdid it in the beginning. And I will have to share my postpartum story at some point. If you guys want that, let me know, comment below or shoot me a DM, because it was quite the roller coaster for just having like first-degree tearing and not having a C-section or anything. Like I really went through it, but it was such a fun experience. There were some things that I wish had gone differently that I was pretty bummed out about. The first being, when we got there, my plan had been to go natural if I could. And if I couldn't make it, I was fine with that. My backup was going to be laughing gas. And then my backup was going to be an epidural. But honestly, like I didn't set high expectations for myself. I just wanted to see like what was my body capable of. But when I told the nurse that when she was filling out my paperwork and I just got to the room, she literally laughed at me and she was like, no, just do an epidural. Like that's what everyone does. Like you don't need to go natural. And I was pretty shocked. I felt like nurses should be advocating for the women that do want to go natural, because it is rare, but it's what our bodies are designed and created to do. Not that epidurals are bad. Like I got one and I loved it, but it's what our bodies are created to do. So why would you talk down to someone that wants to attempt to do that? It just felt off, and I felt discouraged, and I did not feel supported by them. And so that was one thing. And then I do remember in the middle of the night, the lady had come back to check on me, the nurse, and a couple rooms down, a woman was screaming at the top of her lungs. And the nurse literally looked at me and said, see, that would be you if you went natural. And I was like, why are you doing this? Like, she's doing great over there. Like, obviously she's screaming because she's doing it natural, but good for her. Like, why are you saying like, ooh, you're better than her because you got an epidural and listen to me. It just was a bummer. And then also with Pitocin, I just didn't realize how much you can advocate for yourself in a hospital. So when they were like, oh, your contractions aren't close enough together, we're putting you on Pitocin, I didn't know that I could just be like, no, like I'm not doing Pitocin. And I also didn't realize the effects that Pitocin would have on me. So next time I'm definitely going to be advocating for myself and saying, no, like I'm going to walk the halls, like I'm going to do other things to get my body moving, because my body is naturally going to kick into these contractions if I can. And I know there are certain circumstances where Pitocin is needed when your water's broke, because your body just isn't clicking and it's not contracting consistently, but they really did not give me enough time to like give my body a chance, which I'm bummed about, because that might have given me a chance to go natural. And even if I hadn't gone natural still, I think that it just would have been a better experience for me. So I just want to like encourage you guys to advocate for yourselves. If you are pregnant or if you already had a baby and you had bad experiences, like you get to pick your nurse. If you don't like your nurse, you can switch out nurses. If you don't want to go on Pitocin, you can tell them that. Like I could probably think of other things. Honestly, like the fact that she forgot to flip me to the other side is really frustrating. Like I should have called her out on it. I should have asked for a different nurse maybe. I just had like small different things happen where I felt devalued, just like I was another girl that was coming in to have a baby. So advocate for yourselves. But if you haven't had a baby yet, I cannot stress how fun it is. Like I cannot wait to go back into labor. I'm not even pregnant. We're not even going to get pregnant for a while, but I cannot wait to go back into labor. I'm here for it. I'm super excited. So I can't wait. But if you have a crazy birth story, I want to hear it. So drop it in the comments on YouTube or shoot me a DM on Instagram, Bethany Rachel Jones, and I would love to talk to you and hear your story. But we can't wait to see you next week and talk about a new parenting subject. Have a great week.